Now, I normally don't do these videos, but before I start this video, I just want to address that the next video will be animated. But for now, I have to address something that seems to be quite a concern for the Gen Y for YouTube, such as myself. So I checked out this whole Coppa deal, which I checked online seems to be not affecting just the Gen Y storytime animation or animation parodies or any animation that is regardless to attract mostly older audiences, but of the whole community as a whole. So after reading more about this Coppa thing online, it seems to be quite startling and quite scary. And if you want to know more about the whole Coppa deal and how to try and stop it, the position is in the description below if you want to learn more about it and how bad it is. So I could talk about how bad it will affect the whole Gen Y of YouTube, whether it be gaming, let's plays, let's boxing videos, or toy reviews, but I'm going to talk about the Gen Y that I'm in, which is storytime animation. So after reading about the whole Coppa deal, I had to look over what they said, and basically, if your channel or video alike seems too appealing to kids, then you have to check mark either for kids, but if you do check mark it for kids, you mostly get around 60, 70 to even 90% of your revenue cut off, which is insane. And that doesn't stop there. That also means you get your comments, and you might get a fine of at least 42 grand or more if you lie by the checkmarking box. If you checkmark something for kids but it doesn't turn out to be for kids. So, after I feel like this new rule is annoying, but this seems simple enough. I just have to go to my channel, and judging by my my graph for my lifetime my channel's been so far, it seems to be definitely over the age of 13, which is considered over the age of a kid. Because in the FTC rules, it definitely says that to be considered a kid is under 13, and judging from my chart, it definitely, is definitely over the age of 13. So I feel, okay, well, that should be good enough. I should just checkmark my box, not for kids, and I won't be affected by this change. What could go on? Well, two things, obviously. One, since you might have to try and attract more subject matter into your channel and videos. And I know most of the animation community has a hard time with the demonetization for being too crude or vulgar. So there's certain ones that try to be in the middle range when they do have to swear, but not too much of a crude swear. So let's say light swears, like these words over here. So as long as you try to be creative with the demonetization rules, well, you follow the FTC rules. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just checkmark not for kids, and I can just continue on with my channel, trying to make the demonetization work, be it not too adult, but like in the middle ground for like teens, teenagers, and young adults, and even adults alike. So I don't get affected by this. And my channel's not monetized, but I do like to get monetized one day, and hopefully I'd be able to make money to do what I love. And it's a shame for these kinds of laws to affect certain YouTubers that I look up to, only to discourage them that their career is short-lived just because they don't want to risk of getting a fine. So, I check my barks, not for kids, and you would think it's simple enough. What could go on? I'm in the clear. I wouldn't get that fine. Well, that is when I thought wrong. After being corrected by my colleague, TJ Tunes, he corrected me when I was trying to say doesn't seem too bad, but he also said it also affects people who do checkmark themselves as not for kids. Because it says in the YouTube rule, FTC laws to be exact, that anything that is cartoons or cartoon figures can seem appealing to kids. And apparently, like, even if you do checkmark for kids, not for kids, but since, you know, channels like mine and his and everyone else seems appealing to kids, even though the subject matter seems to be intended to a little bit older audiences for those over the age of 13, it seems that the YouTube system, automated system, makes the animation in cartoons still in the genre for kids. That to me is just ridiculous, because something is drawn in a cartoon figure or animated, it doesn't make it for kids. You can still sadly get that fine from Coppa, even if you check my not for kids, but the automated system from YouTube says otherwise, and says that you're lying, you can still get that fine, which could discourage a lot of the storytime animation community from being fined and sued, because this whole idea of cartoons seem appealing to kids is definitely not, it's pretty debatable. And it seems like the YouTube automated system doesn't know that. YouTube and even FTC doesn't know the difference between animated stuff for kids and for adults. And I feel like I want to send a message to the FTC and hopefully YouTube as well, to hopefully they can know both of them are complete different, and how they can coexist and they don't have to get rid of the other. I like to start from and before I start why they should fix the whole ideal of what seems appealing to animation on YouTube, I like to let the FTC know about the history of how cartoons have its history of different audiences it reached over the decades. We got Disney, for example, how it created little shorts, mostly appealing to kids and wider audiences alike. And then when they released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it reached to an audience of families alike, knowing that it can appeal to kids, the parents, and even the seniors alike, because it's the kind of stuff that would seem appealing to wider audiences. Now let's go a little further and see Warner Brother cartoons, especially Looney Tunes. Now again, this cartoons of like Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, it's animated and it's appealing to kids, but at the same time, looking back over the years, most of the jokes of subject matter were mostly for adults, that only the adults would get. So even if the kids in the audience would be enjoying watching Bugs being goofy in that, they would never understand certain jokes that they don't seem to get over their heads, and only that adults would get, and adults would get a giggle out of that. So it wasn't, you know, the subject matter or the hidden jokes or inside joke isn't too crude or anything, but it's a little light humor for something adults would get that kids wouldn't. And especially there are certain Warner Brother cartoons that might show like drinking or guns shooting in the place. And even then, like I said, it seemed like the Warner Brother cartoons were mostly targeted towards those definitely over the certain age for teenagers and adults than it is for kids. But kids probably remembered watching them anyway because the parents let them. And I will get to the whole parents' responsibility of what their kids should watch in a sec. Now let's go decades further into the 70s. And there's one movie that changed the whole genre, that not animation is definitely not for kids. It can be for adults too, with Fritz the Cat. Fritz the Cat was the first, at least, adult animated movie given an X rating, appealing to adults alike, and was quite successful, proving that even for a movie targeted for adults may not be that successful like Disney movies that's appealing to family audiences and kids alike. It could definitely show that adults can play a role too, for just adults only, and a cartoon can still be successful for a certain audience like adults, compared to Disney family animated movies. which revolutionized that both can coexist and have separate audiences alike. Now, let's skip a couple decades and go to the 90s, when there's 3 adult animated shows. We'll start with The Simpsons. The Simpsons have definitely changed to make for television for family and older teenager audiences to watch. And it's animated, but that doesn't make it for kids, because in The Simpsons, there's a lot of subject matters in cursive and a lot of adult humor only adults would get, even maybe teenagers and even young adults. But the subject matter in all those adult jokes alike are not that crude compared to the kiddie shows that people grew up with. And let's go back to the second adult animated show, Family Guy. Family Guy has been given an 14 plus rating because it's definitely appealing to those over the age of 14. Definitely not under 14. And it's definitely a little tiny bit more crude than The Simpsons, but the whole idea of a family going through struggles, but also having certain cutaway jokes for adults to get. And in the 90s, it wasn't just adult animated cartoons on TV, there was also separate cartoons for the kids to enjoy. Because this was before YouTube started, it was television watching in the living room for kids to watch. There was this kind that was for adults, like The Simpsons and Family Guy. And then there was the kind that's for the kids. Let's say, for example, SpongeBob, Rocko's Modern Life, etc. Every 90s cartoon we grew up with. Even for TV in certain channels, it did prove that certain audiences can coexist in separate things alike. Now, then there was one show that definitely changed it to more crude humor, and that would be South Park. South Park definitely is more crude than Family Guy, and definitely shows that it seems to be a show that only mostly young adults and adults would get, and maybe not for teenagers. And that would be given an 18 plus rating to let audiences know, and definitely the parents, that this is not for you kids. And even before the cartoon starts, and some shows have these as well, they always play this.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Exactly. Viewer discretion is advised. And just because something's animated, that doesn't mean it's for kids. Now let's skip to a dozen years later. YouTube started. And when YouTube started, ever since then, certain creators on YouTube that release animated stuff that's for kids and also mostly for adults, young adults and teenagers alike. And again, those was during the years when both can coexist, because there are certain audiences that know their place where they belong. Then after a while, YouTube started making an app called YouTube Kids. And YouTube Kids was to keep the audiences under the age of 13 to go there. So, there's a place for kids to enjoy their content, while the main YouTube stuff is mostly for those over the age of 13. But last year, YouTube and Google got fined $170 million because apparently Google and YouTube has been collecting data on kids, and apparently kids has been watching on certain things on YouTube main. Long story short, Coppa took more of an effect for YouTube, and YouTube had no choice but to add these rules that we have now that we're forced to reckon with. And it seems like all this problem started all because parents didn't have the energy or didn't have the time to put the YouTube Kids app on for them, and figure if they just go on the YouTube main app, what could go on? They're my kids. They'll be glued to the screen. It doesn't matter what they watch. Now, I remember when I was around the age of 12 to 14, my stepdad and my mom would watch Family Guy with me. Since Family Guy's for those 14 and over, they figure if they watch it with me, then they think that some of the jokes wouldn't affect me. Now, I never really thought much of the show, but there were some jokes that stuck with me at my age. And there was one point in school when I can't remember what the joke was, but it was definitely crude. And then the teacher heard it, and I got in trouble for it. and the teacher got a hold of my folks, and I got in trouble from my parents as well for a show they let me watch. So what did they do? Did they write an angry letter to Fox and demand Fox to change certain rules for show creators on their channel? No, they didn't do that. What I got was grounded. I was grounded and was forbidden to watch that show until the time came till I was ready to watch the show under my parents' watch. It's kind of a conflicted issue with the whole parents thing, because you can't force a company like YouTube to like always watch your kid. And I have friends that do have kids that do know that YouTube Kids is a separate thing. But you do get some parents who see YouTube Main as no different, even though that the whole point of a separate app is to keep a separate audience. There are a lot of things to talk about, but I just want to end it there and give my thought about this whole thing. I want this message to let the FTC and YouTube know with this simple sentence I said earlier. Just because something is drawn or animated, it doesn't mean it's for kids. As a reminder that animation is a medium. Until then, I will still be making videos, and I will be keeping my eye open for any changes or updates to the whole Coppa deal. Until then, I'll see you next time.